Okay, this video for the Cornet Project class that meets here at Landmark Missionary Baptist Church, Jacksonville, Arkansas, 2200 Marshall Road. We have this chart here, and we're answering a question about regeneration. This is also set up in a pre or post. We recognize that from the low threshold of entry into conversations like young versus old, open versus closed theism, very far removed. You almost say extreme, except they're so benign, the categories, and they're just so simply expressed, they really communicate nothing. So it's like pre or post tribulation. You really haven't even determined the tribulation being the hinge on which all that turns. So this is familiar with this class, but this is another that is determined. It's definitive. That's why language-based apologetics and outreach, even James White, the unsurpassed scholar, the leader in apologetics through Alpha and Omega ministry, and I recommend, if you want to see a person who's both a Calvinist, advocate of Calvinism, a defender of it, but also a scholar, he's it. That would be the number one scholar who is also an advocate, an apologist of Calvinism. He gives a rationale for it. So he says regeneration precedes faith. People that are often accused, or as I've been categorized, Arminian, which that's, what else could they say? They don't know the grammar anyway. So they say that we say it follows it. So can we define that and determine it? Yes, we can. Then there's those who say regeneration is apart from the gospel and then or through the gospel. So it's an either or here, it's a pre or post there. So you're familiar with that. That's nothing new for us. So when we begin to evaluate it, we can look at it from the language. You can look this up. Here's 1 John 5:1, the first part of it. Everyone, the one who is believing. Now this is a participle here, present active participle. And its function as a gerundive noun. There we go. So everyone who is believing, that is definitively the one who is believing, everyone who is believing that Jesus is, form of Amy, third person, is the definite article Christ, Messiah, out from the God, and here's the verb from genao, which is the question here. Here's the verb genao, and this is the perfect indicative active form of it. Okay, so this shows antecedent action. So prior to being the one who is believing, then it says has previously. So let's translate that out. This, so yeah, has been. Yeah, has been previously, and then I'll just put previously here to show the antecedent action, and that's fathered or generated, fathered out from the God. Okay, so that's where the question comes, does it precede faith or not? Remember, it's a pre or post setup. It's been set up as pre or post. This has been set up as either or with relationship to the gospel. So we'll deal with the pre or post. So here we have grounds for prior to this participle here. And let me remove my sheet here. There we go. Let's just set that over here for a moment, and I should be able to come back to that in just a moment if we need it. So over here we now have John 20:31, the second part, and this is in order that as ones who are believing, you might be having life in the name of Him. And the first part of that was here, John 20:31. When it talks about the purpose of the Gospel of John to be written. Let me fix that. This would be the first part that deals with the finite verb, a. So in order that you might believe, this is an aorist subjunctive, simple action. So it's that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ. Notice over here in 1 John 5:1a, the Son of the God, and now we can switch over here, and in order that as one who is believing, you might be having life in the name of Him. So you can see that where this falls now, rather than before or after, pre or post faith, we're looking at the word faith, which was not defined properly. So we have the difference is a finite verb. That's right here. So here's the finite verb. I'll use that. So here's the finite verb. And then in the second half of John 20:31, let's say be, here's the participle. So you have a participle. So to help you with this is a person here. This gerative noun, this is a person. This is the one fathered, and this is an action. So as we've learned now in the iamcorne.org Apologetic and Outreach Ministry of Landmark Missionary Baptist Church, that you really have to think about these things that are set up in such simpleton forms, like a pre or post, an either or, and we'll address that section either or. We've dealt with the pre or post, so now what we've learned, definitively learned, and can demonstrate is that we have the finite verb for believe, and then we have the participle believing. There. So believing, and there's the participle. So where are we at? Know that you might be. Sorry, I left my E out. Might be believing. So here's where regeneration is. So there's where regeneration occurs. So now you can see that the pre or post breaks down. It's really illegitimate, and we can definitively, with more precision, demonstrate that when you define faith, so we're talking about the verb to believe or the participle describing the believer, and then we have the text in 1 John 5:1, because even Dr. James White used this as a proof text for the antecedent action of the perfect tense finite verb to this participle. And you say, oh, I just can't keep up with all that. Well, we can when we conclude that regeneration follows the verb believe and precedes the action, that is, it precedes the participle believing. You say, well, boy, that's really splitting hairs. Well, yeah, I guess. It's just that this language is very inflected, very wordy. So back to our, supposedly the dilemma we had was a pre or post. I'll just write that up there. When this was set up as pre or post, so here's your pre, here's your post, pre or pre-faith or post-faith. I mean, again, I was trained by, again, my systematic theology teacher was an engineer, my hermeneutics teacher was a scholar who had multiple degrees, and our language professor, Dr. Randy Murray, for example, he was also multi-degree professional, very scholastic, precise, and we would first have to deal with these parts of this. So when you make an assertion, regeneration precedes faith, we would ask faith, noun, faith, verb, faith, participle. Well, if it's faith as a noun, then that could be the participle which functions as a gerundive noun. Okay, well, when you learn to ask that, you can ask it. And then again, as Dr. Terry Parrish says, people don't want to go through all that. They don't want to hear that. It's like gardening. They don't want all that the farmer does. We just want the tomatoes, the produce. Okay, so here's the tomatoes. You believe, that's an unregenerate person believes, they're fathered, and then they are one who is believing. So that's easy. Now down here, this either or, and I'll just write that real quick. This either or, and you can certainly see that we're very accustomed to dealing with those, the either ors all over the world. They're just false dichotomies. Here they set up two sides opposing that can never be reconciled. The either or now fallacy, which you probably can't read that, so I'll try to clean that up a little bit. But anyway, either or. You say, well, boy, they can sure put people. Well, you have to remember the people that repeat this stuff fell for it also. And then if they've gone too far, then they just pass it on to other people, and people are so willing to jump for a pre or post position, never asking the questions, and then if someone gives as a proof, as Dr. James White did, about 1 John 5:1, he won't call your attention. Now, I'm not saying he did that deliberately or maliciously, because this is enough for him. So when someone bothers to use the text as a rationale, they really don't find necessary to go into such precision. But again, we're just evaluating the things people say and testing it. And then here we have the participle that follows. But now let's answer the either or of the gospel. Paul said, for in Christ Jesus, through the gospel, I myself fathered you all. So Paul said through the gospel, he fathered them. So Paul said in Christ Jesus, he is an apostle, in Christ Jesus, through the gospel, I myself fathered you. So the instrumental means through which they were fathered is the gospel. So the question of are people regenerated apart from the gospel, that's definitively answered. The question of pre or post has been definitively answered. And I think that would be enough to just say, you can see why it's easier. People pick up one or the other. A pre or post, we don't really have to think much. You certainly don't have to be a precisionist. You don't need to study. And the threshold of entry into this argument, I've heard people say pre and post, or say that faith doesn't precede, or regeneration doesn't precede faith, and they never had a rationale. Didn't care about the text. Didn't care if they would ever know it. They just knew that's just not the way it is. So, but remember, this is an apologetics and outreach website, a ministry of Landmark Missionary Baptist Church. So I'm not here bantering. I'm not out to get Dr. James White. The Lord used him mightily to reach untold multitudes out there, to provoke others to quit being so imprecise, perhaps. Some people have been catalyzed, and if out of nothing more than their animosity toward him, they finally were awakened to do their own studies. Good. Study, provoke. I'm not bothered at all by Dr. James White, Alpha and Omega Ministries. Wretched television by the big, tall Todd Friel doesn't shake my schema. I don't know what all that's about, how people so overreact. That energy would be best harnessed, which is what we do in a church. We study. So that's enough, and I'll stop with this. It's Mother's Day. Everyone's gone home now, and I'm lingering and heading out here in just a moment. So if you need any more than that, here's the text. Here's the issue, pre or post faith, either or, and with reference to the gospel. And then you can see that the conclusion is it falls between after the finite verb and prior to the participle. So regeneration precedes faith, generative noun, and the person, and the gospel precedes the action to believe. So you have a blessed day, a good Mother's Day, and enjoy this lesson.